Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to be talking about the definition of high horology. Actually, we're going to try to use something that the Foundation of High Horology put together that they said, look, here are the criteria for fine watchmaking. And if you meet that criteria and you do this and that, you can become a partner in the Foundation of High Horology. Now, there were three groups that started it. The Richemont group, which consists of about 42 different companies. Now, not all of the companies were included in considered to be fine watchmaking, even though they were part of the Richemont group. But some, such as Vacheron Constantin, Jaja Lecoutre, et Songa, et Longa, un son. Hope I said that closer. I never can get it quite right. Okay, so the Richemont group, Girard Perregaux. Girard Perregaux is now part of another group, a Louis Vuitton group, and then there's Audemars Piguet, and Audemars Piguet is independent. So these are the three entities that started the Foundation for High Horology. All right, now the companies that make up the partnership, and we'll say that they became part of it as a fine watchmakers, and there are 42 of them, and not all of the ones, but all of the ones that Richemont considered to be part of fine watchmaking are included. Several independents are included, H. Moser et C., Laurent Ferrier, F.P. Journe, and other ones from other places, such as Tag Heuer. That's part of another group, and I can't think right off the top of my head what group they're of. So there are watch companies here that are part of other groups plus independents, and of course there's several from the Richemont group. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now, they also included what they call the perimeter brands in fine watchmaking. And this is something that I think they took a look at these companies and they said, hey guys, you look like the kind of people that are the kind of watchmaking company that would fit with us, that would have fine watchmaking. I think it's something like that. They either decided the heck with it, we don't need you, or they hadn't quite met all the criteria. Now, companies like Patek Philippe, they didn't have a whole lot to prove. Philippe Dufour had nothing to prove. Same with Roger Smith. Roger Smith was the student of George Daniels. I mean, he makes like 11 watches a year and doesn't care what, and he sells every one of them. There's some others on here too. Andreas Stradler. They don't really need to be recognized because they already are, but they're at least recognized by the Foundation of High Horology as being something there. So they're not going to say, hey, look, don't put my name up there. So this is sort of an interesting thing. Also, too, there are a number of companies such as Jacques Droz, let's see, what else? Blancpain, Breguet, who are owned by the Swatch Group, another giant group. All right, so there are some watches that are part of that. Now, there's Rolex too, and Rolex is, of course, probably the richest and the most powerful of all of the we'll call them luxury watch companies. And I think that in terms of the criteria we had a thing: exceptional horology, high horology, strong horology, and all of these that are on this list are either from strong horology or high horology. Some, such as Vine Halter and Beat Haldeman, these are considered exceptional horology. Same thing with von der Klau. So this is sort of another group, I think, that may or may not want to become a partner, and maybe there's something in the partnership that they don't want, but they're saying, look, these guys, they would certainly fit in with what we're trying to do here. All right, so there you have the sort of the that are recognized as these guys are part of high horology, and in a very broad sense, in the sense of they're engaged in fine watchmaking. Okay, so what I want to do today is to take a look at what are the criteria. Now, there's 7 criteria that they lay out, and today I tell you I'm going to do one, and that's the first one. Excuse me. R&D, production, and technical expertise. This is the one that sort of like, okay, this is sort of down to the nitty-gritty of watchmaking. Now, the other 6, style, design, and artistic experience, history and DNA, distribution and after-sales service, connoisseurs and collectors, brand image and communication, and training. These I think are important, and I think that this is by people who create, the manufacturers. They create and sell watches. We're the collectors. Okay, so it's like certain of these things aren't as important to us as they are to the manufacturers. All right. So let's take a look at this, and what we're going to look at 8 criteria that are part of what they call R&D, production, and technical expertise. R&D is research and development. All right. First of all is the percentage of the range that can be called a technical and or precious fine watch. Now, what this means is sort of interesting. They're saying, well, look, if this company makes one really great watch and then the other stuff is, sort of pretty junky, that's not what we're looking for. It's a very tricky kind of thing in terms of fine watchmaking. I think of Nomos, who is one of my favorite watch companies. Philippe Dufour said that they're probably the best watch to get under $10,000. So I like Nomos. The thing about Nomos, though, Nomos self-identifies what they consider high horology, and the rest not yet. And so this is sort of an interesting kind of thing. And I think that this criteria would look at that and say, hey guys, you've got like a very small percentage that even you yourself say is high horology, and the rest of the stuff is okay. And especially now that more and more, almost all of it's in-house. Okay, so this is the kind of thing where people say, well, this is what this kind of criteria is for. You're going to have your major production, as opposed to having a bunch of cheap watches and then having 1 or 2 really good ones. The second criteria is the manufacturing, the movements, and the percent of the range with in-house movements. Okay, now they divide it into 4 segments. I think another time we had a little thing on this, but the 4 segments are historic maisons, contemporary brands, luxury brands, and artists and creators. The manufacture of the movement, the percentage of the range with in-house movements. Now, this is for the historic maisons and the artists and creators. Artists and creators would be someone like F.P. Journe, for example, and Laurent Ferrier. These, the historic maisons would be things like Vacheron Constantin, Audemars Piguet, Jaja Lecoultre. Okay. And so then the second one, they have sort of this in two parts. Then the percentage of the range with exclusive and/or original movements. Now, this is for what they call the luxury brands and contemporary brands. Chanel is probably considered would be an example. I have a couple of examples there of what different kinds. Chanel would be considered pretty much a luxury brand, but they won the jewelry award this year. But they made their own in-house movement. Before they were doing that, they had companies like Agenhor. I mean, they've always had really great movements, which is sort of interesting for a Chanel, Chanel number 5 or something like that. All right. The third criteria is production of external parts, a percentage of external parts. Now, this would be the case, the bracelet, the dial, that are designed and developed in-house. This is sort of like, okay, so you have this really great watch, and then you go to, I don't know, Joe's Case Company and buy the cases and everything else. That this is something they want the case to be designed in-house. And now working with a case manufacturer, there's one that Poinçon works with. I think he's part or one of the major owners of it, but they take all of their watches, or they get all of their cases from this other place other than the Poinçon's shop. But anyway, like I said, a very close relationship. So that's not quite the same, but it's the kind of thing. Beauvais, I have Beauvais up there because they've got this second. They have this two things. One's called Beauvais 1822, and the other one's called Demier 1738 manufacture. The manufacturer does the movement, and then Beauvais 1822 does the design and most of the other aspects of the watches, including the cases. They're both owned by the same. They're owned by Pascal Raffi, so it's okay. Number 4, the watches with horological decorations, chamfering, polishing, satin brushing. Now, this has to do with essentially what's called finishing. Here is a Parmigiani Fleurier in the back. You look at that thing, and there's this gorgeous finish that are done. One of the things, A. Longa and Sun, they have a lot of engraving on the backs of their cases and so forth. Not their cases, but actually their movements. They probably have on some of their cases too. So this is with horological decorations. Chamfering, polishing, and satin brushing actually they're very practical in certain sense because they kept erosion down. So this is another criteria for fine watchmaking. Now, what we can do is, remember, as collectors, we can look for these things. This is sort of say, hey, let's keep an eye out on these guys and take a look and make sure that they have it. All right, the technical innovation percentage of the range that shows one or more technical innovations. Now, this is all different kinds of things that innovations. Right now, I have on my H. Moser Henry double hairspring. The double hairspring is an innovation because what it does, it keeps the balance wheel centered because you've got opposite forces keeping it in one place. All right, that's an innovation. The one that's showing there is an MB&F Legacy, and it's got these two floating, that thing is incredible, two floating balance wheels that are above the dial, and then they have underneath in the movement, they have the other part of it, the escapement. That is a technical marvel. All right, the next one is the product quality, and this is a reference to internal and or external quality standards. Now, they have either an internal standard, communication to the customer, or an external standard such as COSC, Poinçon de Genève, and then they have etc. Fourier set up their own testing, which is actually considered to be tougher than COSC. There's another one called Metas that's used by some. Now, FP Journe doesn't use any of them. It just basically says, look, this is what we're doing, and they're up to standards, and we're not going to have, somebody look at. It's really funny. Patek Philippe used to be the Poinçon, the Geneva seal. They used to get the Geneva seal. Vacheron Constantin still does. FP Journe and Patek Philippe don't. FP Journe basically says, look, if you want to test it, be my guest. You can go buy one. We're not going to send them over there with the criteria you have. Patek Philippe, on the other hand, now has, instead of a Geneva seal, it's got a Patek Philippe seal on it. They used to have the Geneva seal. My Patek Philippe has the old Geneva seal on it. So it's sort of an interesting kind of thing. I have no idea what the details of the whatever went on to change somebody's mind. All right, so the product quality is important, and it is, of course, to collectors. That's essentially, I think it's extremely important. All right, the seventh one is the use of certification laboratories for precious stones. Now, these are things like GIA and SSEF. Now, these are only for you have watches with gems in them. I don't think any of mine have them outside of the movement. They're not talking to the gems that are in the movement, but rather on the outside. Here are a couple Christopher Claret. Not a couple of them. There's one in the front and the back, and you can see all around the bezel there you have emerald cut diamonds and teardrop diamonds. It's full of them, and even in the back they have some jewels. So, but they won't let you put in just anything. So that's again part of fine watchmaking. Okay, the final one is the percentage of the range featuring gem set watches and/or precious noble metals, gold, platinum, and special alloys. Now I put up a picture of Audemars Piguet, a Royal Oak. That may be an offshore too. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it. But this one is in what's called frosted gold. I always think of at least the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak as just a real good stainless steel watch. But it's only, even though they sell more of those than anything else, Royal Oak and Royal Oak Offshore, a large number of them have the noble metals, or I guess even some of them may have some gems set in them as well. I think what this is becoming a little more problematic because the price of gold has just gone crazy. And some companies now are actually having stainless steel where they never had them before. All right, so those are the 8 criteria. And the watches that are part of it, by the way, too, online, the Foundation of High Horology has a website. And there's tons of more detail than I've been able to give here. But I wanted to provide something because a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by high horology? And this is not a bad starting place. I think that the Foundation of High Horology really did a lot. And I know some of the people involved in what they call the Cultural Council, and these are the guys guys and gals that look at it and say, hey, this one's okay, this one doesn't quite meet the criteria. Now, what I'd like to hear from you is, what do you think? Is this something that collectors could use to take a look at the watches they're thinking of buying and saying, hey, this meets the criteria, or not? Now, of course, you can simply look at the brands, both the partners and the perimeter brands, and say, oh, since it's there, I can get one and pretty know for sure it's okay. But there's some important brands that are left out, in my opinion. And Harboring too, for example. Here you have this little company that wins all of these awards. Now, of course, they're not making gold watches, so that may be part of it. But on the other hand, Lang and Hein is. They have some fabulous watches. And so it's sort of like, how come those guys weren't even put in the perimeter? They should be, but, so this is something I'd like to hear from you, what your thoughts are. Is this has any use at all for collectors? Okay, well, on Sunday we're going to have a collection review that is of these watches that are really amazing. And I hope to see you then. This has been Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection.